Welcome everyone to Empress 201 242 Svoke Build Guide Part 2. This is Syla, and today I'll be covering advanced rotations and text for Svoke Empress. In this video, there's a lot more detail you can't find anywhere else, so please watch till the end. Let's begin with a balanced card rotation. In the previous video, I told you guys to stick to the basic rotation when you get a balanced card, but there's a much stronger rotation. This rotation works best with level 9 or higher cooldown gems, or you need a moon card. It's a rotation that's much stronger in 440 builds, but it's still a very good rotation for a 242 Svoke build. When you practice Trixium parses, you'll notice that it's not so easy to transition to this rotation from the basic one. It's easier if you have Wheel or Joy card to reset or lower your Spiral Edge cooldown, but I strongly suggest you practice in Trixion for a smooth transition as well as the rotation itself. Note that key point to higher DPS is using Secret Garden and Spiral Edge more often, while maintaining high uptime of your self buffs from Call of Destiny and Scratch Dealer. Let's move on to Balance plus Snake rotation. There are 5 combo moves you can use, and this is where it gets tricky, so you really need to practice these yourself so that you can pull any of these according to the situation. I also suggest practicing auto attack animation cancelling, because it's a crucial part that leads to higher DPS. If you don't practice executing these combos, your mana will fill pretty quick, and eventually going back to Magic Addiction state. So you start off by applying both your self buffs. Then you can use Edge combo 2 times, followed by COD combo. If you practice auto attack animation cancelling, you can fit in 3 rune skills within COD buff duration. Then refresh your attack speed and movement speed buff using Scratch Dealer combo. Use Edge combo once, refresh your COD buff, then use the remaining Edge combo. This is just an example, and in real rates, you would have to adjust according to the boss pattern and your position. Let's see this rotation in motion. Note that Snake card only lasts for 16 seconds, while a Balance card lasts for 30 seconds. Check your buff bar and pay attention to the remaining buff time. When Snake buff ends, you should proceed with the Balance card rotation from earlier. These are the Stagger values for skills. With a series of buffs to Arcana Stagger, Empress now has a very high short-term stagger and high long-time stagger. Note that the additional stagger from Rune skill stack proc is irrelevant to the number of stacks you have, but 4 stack proc gives you more identity. This is a stagger rotation I use for DR staggers. If it's a non-DR stagger, forget about this. With Whirlwind and 1 4-of-a-kind reset, this adds up to 540 stagger in 6 seconds, which is more than enough to solo stagger pre-nerf normal or Hell Clown Mario. Best part of this rotation is that if 4-of-a-kind resets 3 or more times, you can enter balanced mana state right away with Call of Destiny and Rain back up, and other skills up in 2-3 seconds. Let's go over the Joy card timing. In balanced mana state, it's pretty easy. Note that before I use a Joy card, I use Secret Garden first so that I get to reduce Spiral Edge and Rain cooldown a bit more. This is because Secret Garden comes back up quick anyway. It's a bit trickier in Magic Addiction state. In Magic Addiction state, I most of the time hold onto my Joy card until I use second set of skills to enter balanced mana state to maximize my balance uptime. If you use Joy card in Magic Addiction state and use all skills to enter balance, you can end up in balance with no skills to use, which can lead to shorter balance uptime. You will learn these Joy card timings with practice and experience. My advice is that there is no need to rush this card. Try to get the most out of this card rather than just using it on Rain only. One thing to mention is that for chain skills like Evoke or Spiral Edge, you can use the Joy card before the second cast to reduce the cooldown further. Using this tech, when you're executing the balance card rotation, you can use Joy card before your second Spiral Edge, and your next cycle will be much smoother. You should try this yourself and see how it works with your current cooldown gems. Knowing when to use your evokes is very important for a 242 Svoke build. But more importantly, you need to learn how to separate them. Separating the evokes bring multiple advantages that lead to higher DPS when you use it right. First, Evoke consumes mana only in the first cast, so it helps with balance uptime by burning mana faster than using 2 evokes in a row. Second, you're less likely to miss both evokes due to boss patterns if you're separating them. And lastly, you can rotate more skills in time and have more time to digest your cards in your cycle with less identity overloading. It's really hard to formulate when to use your evokes, so you need to learn this yourself. But remember, if Scratch Dealer or Spiral Edge comes back up, it always has higher priority than Evoke. Note that Call of Destiny doesn't always have a higher prio because of a Call of Destiny holding tech. The holding tech will be explained in the end. Now let's learn how to use Evokes to boost your burst damage. When you're doing a standard Awakening opener, you get a card from Evoke around the time of spacebar usage. You should check and use the card so that your Awakening and Rain hits with 6 Adrenaline stacks and possible buff from a card. A good card to use here would be something like Call, Twisted Fate, or Corrosion, whereas you would not want to use a Star card or a Joy card. If you don't use a card, your Rain and Awakening hits with 5 Adrenaline stacks, so make sure you get that additional stack before you start your opener. Evoke can also be used during Atro Burst. Let's say you have a damage card combo like Call Judgment. Before you burst, start with 2 Evokes and do the remaining burst. But as you're bursting, check your card from Evoke and use it right away. If it's a damage card, the rune skills after Rain can have up to 3 damage card effects at once. Imagine an Atro Burst with Call, Judgment, and Twisted Fate altogether. My high serendipity damage was 520 mil using this tech. You should practice the execution and learn the very specific timing to use the first card, so that your damage card in Atro applies to your Evokes and as many rune skills as possible. You also need to decide quickly if you're going to use that third card or not within the burst. You can also use this tech with a double Deathbound combo. Theoretically, you can have Call plus Twisted Fate combo on 2 Deathbounds, and it's gonna be the strongest burst on Arcana. My highest Awakening hit was 1.2 billion in Thamine. One last tech of the day, Call of Destiny Holding. This tech is especially more important to those of you guys who plan to play this build with lower cooldown gems. You always want to have 2 or more rune skills used within 3-second Call of Destiny buff. Which means when you don't have other stacking skills after, you can hold on to Call of Destiny briefly so that you can fit in 2 rune skills within the Call of Destiny buff. If you look at the situation below, you might want to press Scotch Dealer followed by Call of Destiny and Rain right away, but then when you proceed with Spiral Edge 2 times in Secret Garden, you won't have a Call of Destiny buff. So in this case, you want to wait a little bit after Scotch Dealer before you use your Call of Destiny. I'll show you what it looks like. Since 242 Svoke build lacks 1 stacking skill, it's important to maintain higher self-buff uptime than 440 builds. Now this is just an example, and in real raids there will be different situations where using this tech will actually lead to lower DPS depending on boss patterns. This is probably one of the biggest issues with people learning this build. Knowing when or when not to hold Call of Destiny will come from experience and practice, but for now, you can just learn that there is something like this too. Now that's all the big stuff for today's guide, but here are some tips for those of you who are trying to learn this build. First, take your time picking up the build. I've been practicing Standard 440, Spec Swift Stream of Veg 440, and this build all together in multiple raids, and I think I reached a point where I can talk about all 3. I'll talk about this more in a different video, but long story short, I still think this build has high ceiling due to nature of getting so many cards, but at the same time, it's the hardest to reach that ceiling. You can't stick to a fixed cycle, and you have to keep adjusting your rotation according to the card draws, while dodging patterns, while maintaining balanced mana, and digesting the card draws. This comes from many hours of practice, both in Trixion and in raids. It took me much longer to learn this build from knowing how to play 440 than learning 440 from scratch. So if you're trying to learn this build, take time and be patient. Give at least a month before you give up and going back to a different build. I actually do not suggest this build to beginner Empress players. If you're new to Empress, I actually recommend checking out 440 builds. Also, when you're playing this build, you might get overwhelmed, but it's important that you stay calm. You'll get faster at executing rotations or digesting your cards with practice. One tip is checking your remaining buff timer early enough so that you can plan ahead of time. Once you get used to the cards, you should start practicing adjusting your cycle according to the cards and practice the transitions between the rotation that was on this video. And lastly, don't hold on to cards for too long. That's the whole point of this build. If you can't utilize the cards very well, this build will be weaker than 440 builds. Also, knowing the raid and boss patterns well is as important as knowing the Arcana stuff. If you're getting hit by patterns and getting knocked over, it'll lead to bigger DPS losses because that means you're entering balance late, but also staying there less. That's it for today. Thank you everyone, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy watching this video. I hope this really helped, and I'm also planning to make a part 3 Q&A video regarding this build. So if you have any questions, please leave them in comments. I'll do my best to help you. I'll also be making a 440 Empress guide and updated 116 Emperor guide. So if you'd like to see more content from me, once again, help me out by pressing the like button and subscribe. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.